Real-time earbud translation has been sitting in stores since 2017. That's 9 years. And in that time, almost nobody stopped to ask what we were quietly giving up. In 2017, Google launched its Pixel Buds with the ability to handle real-time language translation. The tech media called it the Babel fish made real. People were amazed for about a week, and then they moved on. But here's the thing nobody followed up on. A technology that makes learning a second language optional has been sitting in stores for nearly a decade, and we just let it happen. The future didn't arrive with a warning. It arrived quietly, and you bought it at a Best Buy. So this video is about what that actually means for your kids. Because the earbud translation story has at least 10 layers that nobody talks about, and the last one is the one that will genuinely change how you think about all of it. I've gone deep on the research, and what I found is stranger and more consequential than the tech headlines ever let on. Here's where we're going. The hidden bias baked into the translation, the neurological cost nobody warned parents about, the moral dimension that sounds insane until you see the data. And finally, the two languages that are actually growing right now, and what that tells us about everything. Let's start with the one that sounds like a minor technical detail, but is actually a huge deal. Real-time translation is not symmetrical. The machine is better at understanding some directions than others, and the gap is significant. In field testing, certain language pairs like Vietnamese into English are measurably less accurate than the reverse direction, because the AI was trained on vastly more English language data than data from other languages. So when your child grows up relying on an earbud, they will consistently hear a cleaner, more accurate version of what English speakers say, and a degraded, noisier version of what everyone else says. The machine systematically favors the language it learned best, and your kid will have no way of knowing when it's getting something wrong, because the skill that would let them catch the error is exactly the skill they outsourced to the device. That connects directly to something that happened in October 2023 that most people missed. Instagram's AI translation system started appending the word terrorist to the biographies of certain Arabic-speaking users because it incorrectly translated a common Arabic phrase. A person who actually speaks Arabic catches that instantly. Someone who fully trusts the machine has no idea they just got libeled. The earbud hands you fluency without the ability to audit what it's doing, and those two things are not the same. Now here's where it gets structurally strange, and this is the piece I want you to hold on to because I'll come back to it at the end. Of the more than 7,000 human languages on Earth, only roughly 20 have large enough text datasets to train a strong AI translation system. And the selection isn't based on how many humans speak the language, it's based on how much digital text exists. So Hindi, spoken by over 500 million people, is classified as a low-resource language for AI training purposes, while Dutch, spoken by roughly 25 million, ranks as high-resource. 500 million Hindi speakers lose out because the internet happened to accumulate more Dutch text. The earbud future isn't flattening the world. It's quietly picking about 20 winners and leaving the other 6,980 languages to fade. And you can already see that fading in the data. 20 indigenous American languages that were taught in 2013 or 2016 were not taught in 2021, gone from the college catalog in a single survey cycle. This isn't a projection about what might happen in 50 years. It's what already happened in the last 5. 20 distinct languages that human beings developed over centuries dropped off the list while we were arguing about whether AI translation was impressive or not. And here's the part that should genuinely concern any parent watching this. Speaking 2 languages works like a neurological buffer against Alzheimer's disease. Research from cognitive scientist Ellen Bialystok and her colleagues found that bilingualism delays the onset of dementia symptoms by roughly 4 to 5 years. Think about what that means in real terms. 4 to 5 extra years of recognizing your family, of being yourself. But here's the strange part that almost nobody mentions. Once a bilingual person is diagnosed, the decline to full-blown Alzheimer's tends to accelerate faster than it does in monolinguals, because the disease is actually more severe by the time it surfaces. The brain was compensating so effectively that the damage went undetected longer. Bialystok's image for this is sandbags holding back a flood. The sandbags don't stop the water. They buy time. A generation that outsources language to an earbud may lose a 5-year neurological buffer, and they'll never know they had one to lose. And it goes even deeper than cognition. There's a documented phenomenon researchers call the foreign language effect. When people reason through a moral dilemma in a second language rather than their native one, they consistently make different decisions, more deliberate, less emotionally reactive, more utilitarian. The emotional distance created by operating in a non-native language actually changes the output of your moral reasoning. A bilingual person facing the same life or death scenario gives a different answer depending on which language they're thinking in. The earbud gives you the words of another language. It does not give you the second mental mode that comes from actually living inside it. You can order coffee in Japanese without ever gaining the more detached, considered version of yourself that thinking in Japanese would unlock. That's not a small thing. And before you think, well, kids can always learn later if they want to, there's a biological clock on this that most people don't know about. At 4 to 6 months old, babies can distinguish every phoneme in every human language on Earth, every sound, every language. Then the window closes. By 6 months, infants already show preferences for the sounds of their native language. By the end of the first year, they've largely stopped responding to sounds that don't exist in the language around them. This is why adult Japanese speakers often cannot reliably distinguish between the English, R, and LL sounds, a distinction they could hear perfectly as infants. The just use AI to help them learn later plan is fighting a door that biology closed before your child ever wore an earbud. The window isn't in college, it's in the crib. Now, here's something worth dropping a comment on, because I'm genuinely curious what you think. Given everything in this video, do you think earbud translation is making language learning feel less urgent for parents and kids? Let me know below, because the data is pulling in two directions at once and it's fascinating. Here's what I mean. Enrollment in courses in languages other than English plummeted an unprecedented 16.6% between fall 2016 and fall 2021, the largest decline in the history of the census. That's a roughly 236,000 student drop. Yet the number of American bilinguals has grown 260% in the last 50 years, from about 20 million in 1970 to more than 76 million today. How can both things be true simultaneously? Stanford's Guadalupe Valdez puts it plainly. Bilingualism has always been a gift the rich have given to their children. The middle class outsources language to a device. The wealthy still teach their kids the real thing. And that gap is becoming a new class marker hiding in plain sight. There's also a practical ceiling on the earbud that people forget. The translation doesn't happen in your ear, it happens on a server. An internet connection is required, and translation isn't instantaneous. There are already confirmed dead zones, rural areas across multiple continents where the signal simply isn't there. Previous generations who learned a language carried it everywhere, for free, forever. The outsourced generation carries a skill that evaporates the moment the signal drops. If you want to go deeper on how AI is reshaping skills we used to take for granted, I've got another video that connects directly to this one. It's worth watching right after this. Now, here's the piece I promised you at the start. The thing that reframes all of it. Of the 15 most commonly taught languages in U.S. colleges, only 3 showed gains in enrollments between 2016 and 2021. American Sign Language, Biblical Hebrew, and Korean, with Korean up 38.3%. German had the biggest decline at 33.6%. ASL overtook German to become the third most studied language in American colleges. Korean's enrollments have been boosted by a global fascination with Korean pop culture. Think about why those two are the survivors. Korean isn't growing because it's useful for business. It's growing because people fell in love with a culture, the music, the films, the stories. They want to understand it from the inside, not through a filter. And ASL isn't growing because an earbud can't sign. It's growing because the deaf community requires face-to-face human presence. You cannot interpret for a deaf person through a speaker in your ear. The connection demands your body, your hands, your attention. The languages surviving the AI era are not the ones tied to utility. They're the ones tied to identity and belonging. That's the real answer to everything in this video. AI kills language as a tool. What it cannot kill is language as a way of belonging to something. A culture, a community, a way of seeing the world that only opens up when you actually live inside another tongue. The earbud gives your kid a workaround. It does not give them a way in. If you found this useful, subscribe. I go this deep on topics like this regularly, and the next one is already in the works. And if you know a parent who's assuming AI will handle the language question for their kids, send them this. Because the window is shorter than anyone realizes, and it's worth knowing that before it closes.